Welcome to Beyond the Bee, an ongoing dialogue about the past, present, and future of the B Corp movement. Co-hosts Emmy Allison and Ryan Honeyman facilitate an open and honest conversation about the B Corp movement, advise companies on how to increase their impact, and provide a deep dive into the new B Corp standards that are shaping our community.
I'm Ryan Honeyman, a partner at Lyft Economy. My guest today is Rebecca Dray. Rebecca is the founder of Purchasing with Purpose and a recognized leader in purpose-driven procurement. She has more than 20 years of experience in the founding and verification of purpose-driven enterprises and using this business model to help build resilient local economies. She works with businesses, governments, anchor institutions, and purpose-driven organizations to embed social and environmental impact into everyday purchasing decisions. Purchasing with Purpose is a partner for the global participatory verification system and collective known as People and Planet First. Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me. It's nice to see you.
Yeah. So Rebecca, could we start off with a little bit about your background and tell us how you first got interested in the work you're doing today?
Sure. So even though my accent doesn't give it away, I live in the US, been here for 12 years, but I started out in the UK many years ago, originally actually in the corporate sector, and it just sort of didn't feel that fulfilling. And then in the nonprofit sector, where I found that we were just chasing donor funding all the time to try and survive and, mission drift aplenty because you were trying to fit with a donor model. And I went to a conference and this guy started talking about the concept of social enterprise and using a business model to create a social and environmental purpose and outcomes. And it was like my aha moment of thinking I found my people. And so a couple of us founded a social enterprise in the UK. We went on to found 8 more. We were a certified social enterprise in the UK through a system called the Social Enterprise Mark. And we did lots of contracting with government agencies and corporates and so on through this thing that we call like social procurement in Europe. And then fast forward, I moved to the US and I was looking for that same ecosystem. And I was just realizing that here in the US, we've got so many different legal structures, so many different kind of names for this type of organization. We don't really have one legal model that fits for this type of business entity. And we certainly aren't talking about purchasing being the kind of central point of the lever for change, right? And yet, as a country, across government and consumers and business and so on, we're buying trillions of dollars worth of stuff every year, right? So I started working with colleagues here in the US and thinking, how do we help to make this movement of movements, if you like, more visible? How do we bring people together? How do we stop working in silos? So the first thing I did was we founded an organization called Buy Social USA, which failed miserably at what it was meant to do because the terminology of like buy social, so buying from a social enterprise, didn't track here. And big international corporates knew what it was because they were doing it in Europe or in Canada or, in other parts of the world, but it didn't work across the mainstream. The second thing I did was try to bring that certification that had been in the UK to the US as like a sort of social franchise model. That also didn't work. It was so rigid. It was it was focused on a concept that worked in a country that had a legal framework, had government support, had all of this different stuff, right? So a lot of trial and error forward. But for the last 6 or so years, we've been running Purchasing with Purpose, which is like this collective US network of networks, and focusing on the People and Planet First verification system, as you said, and getting that set up and getting it visible and trying to get lots and lots of partners working on it collaboratively. So it's kind of lots of trial and error, lots of trying things out and seeing what works and what doesn't, and really just listening to people and learning and that's what shaped everything that I've done over the last 25 years or so in this space.
Beautiful. And yeah, so people and planet first verification, we've talked about it. I've talked about it a little bit with Aaron Sahan on the sort of Beyond the B and the B Corp context. What could you say about maybe the backstory behind people and planet first, and then like what it is and why it matters for folks?
Sure. So People and Planet First is a participatory verification system. It was developed through partnership because there are millions of enterprises around the world that are choosing to prioritize people and the planet over profit maximization. But the scale of the movement can be hard to see because it's emerged bottom up. It's got different terminology. It's used in different networks, different regions, different sectors. So a group of organizations around the world worked on the verification standards together, and it encompasses social enterprises, cooperatives, fair trade enterprises, mutualist organizations, post-growth enterprises, not-for-profit businesses, earned income nonprofits, social businesses, regenerative businesses, steward companies, benefit corporations. Really, it is a verification system of a business model that is for any enterprise that can meet 5 simple standards, right? So it uses specific design principles to prevent co-optation, to make it accessible and affordable, to value global diversity and support local action and allow for emergence, which is the whole point of a participatory system. But that's really how it sort of came about, was a massive collaboration between lots and lots of organizations who all wanted to have a simple, affordable, accessible system in place for creating opportunity and visibility of these enterprises, no matter what they call themselves.
Now, was that driven at all by folks saying, well, there's maybe something like B Corp or fair trade, but that doesn't really fit into those models? Like, was it created of like, we're not finding value as much in these existing things, so we need to create something new? Or was it sort of like actually not, the creation of it was actually not related to like looking at existing programs or certifications?
So it's very different from something like B Corp certification. It isn't a third-party certification system, right? It's a participatory verification, but it does actually recognize complementary verifications or certifications that are out there. So the idea wasn't so much to replicate or duplicate, it was actually to collaborate in a much broader way, and to recognize that we don't all call this stuff the same thing everywhere in the world, right? And so like B Corps talk to B Corps, and fair trade enterprises talk to fair trade enterprises, right? And social enterprises talk to social enterprises. And yes, there is some connectivity between them, but actually, generally speaking, I think we sort of almost silo ourselves with our terminology. And so this was really about having one system that didn't use anybody's terminology and that recognized where there was an existing system. So within People and Planet First, there's something called double badging, which is if there is an existing certification or verification that might be global, or it might be very local, or it might be specific to a country. If there's something out there that meets or exceeds all 5 of the People and Planet First standards, then people who've gone through that system get People and Planet First free of charge and without additional document review, because they've already done the hard work of getting that other system and it matches or exceeds, right? So it's really about a calling in of all organizations that have this shared value system or have been through a verification. But equally, it isn't, for example, trying to certify a product, right? So it's very different. Like if you just look at the fair trade community, you've got things like the WFTO guarantee system and Fair Trade Federation verified. That's looking at the business model, the same as we are, where, Fair Trade USA, for example, is certifying a product that's made, a fair trade product, right? So we're not looking at that. But we're also not looking to duplicate anything that exists already.
And maybe we could give folks some insight into like what it looks like. So let's say I'm a listener, maybe I have a nonprofit or a for-profit, and I'm like, I want to do it. This sounds interesting. What are the 5 criteria or something that I would be evaluated
Sure.
against?
So the 5 standards are simple. The first one is purpose. So are you trying to solve a social and or environmental problem? And can you show evidence of that? Is it on your website? Is it, in your mission statements, etc.? The second one is about your operations and making sure that you're prioritizing purpose, people and planet over profit in your operational decisions. So are you making good decisions as a business owner in terms of people and planet? The third one is, do you have a self-sustaining revenue model? So are you selling goods or services or both in order to sustain yourself and cover your operational expenses? And that could be, we're talking about legal models, right? That could be if you're a not-for-profit organization and you get grants that have a specific outcome attached to them, that would be considered service income, right? So it's goods for service or fee for service work. The fourth one is that you're reinvesting the majority of your surplus towards your purpose. And the last one is that you're choosing legal structures and financing that protect and lock in your purpose long term. And that probably in the US is one of the most important standards, that you're not looking to take on extractive finance models. You're not looking to sell out and be a unicorn company, right? You're actually in this for the long haul and, thinking about steward-owned organizations or purpose-led businesses, right? That's exactly what we're trying to help prevent, is this buyout and mission drift or purpose drift that happens with organizations as they scale often.
So maybe we could talk about a few of those. I think, as you know, I'm deeply involved in the B Corp world, and there's a lot of criteria for being certified. And this isn't like sort of a comparison necessarily with B Corp, but it is notable that of the 5 criteria, that surplus reinvestment requirement, I think, is really key. And I've heard Aaronch argue that for him, that's like the main difference of like whether you're, a social enterprise or like a company that's choosing purpose first, is like what happens with your profits. Could you speak a little bit about how you decided, like the importance of that one and how you decided to include that as one of the 5 main criteria?
So I guess, the first thing is I didn't decide it, right? So that's part of being a participatory verification system, is that the standards are designed by the participants, right? By the active participants. So this took a long time, a lot of consultation with lots and lots of organizations around the world saying, what do we feel that the minimum bar should be across all of these different types of organization? And reinvesting majority of surplus into mission was really important to everybody. So that's sort of a non-negotiable, if you like, for almost all of the different partner organizations that are around the world. And the one thing I'll say about that is most founders are reinvesting 100% of profit into purpose, right? Because they're building their purpose-driven organization. And so they either don't have surplus, which is one thing, right? They're breaking even every year, or they are reinvesting everything they've got into driving that organization and helping it grow and so on. So even though it seems like it would be the highest bar to meet, it's actually often the lowest. Most organizations will say, yeah, we're doing this all the time, right? And there are examples where reinvestment of surplus might be donating that money to another organization, but I would say the majority are reinvesting into the growth of their organization and it being able to scale its impact and do more. But also what's interesting is that within each of the 5 standards, we have a point system. So you can score 0 points, 1, 2, 3, or 4 points for each of those 5 standards. And the point system was put in place because in different countries, there are different thresholds for some of these things. So, for example, in some countries, you would be considered a social enterprise or a people and planet first enterprise if you're reinvesting 100% of your surplus as opposed to majority, so 51% or more. So the point system allows for that, the differences in different countries, and it respects what's happening on the ground in different organizations around the world as well. So that's an important piece.
Yeah. And self-sustaining revenue model, why is that included? Because one might think, well, it just means you're a going concern or like you're a business that sort of operates. Like, why would that be one of the 5?
Because it's not about being donor dependent or grant reliant, right? So B Corp certification, for example, you would have to be a for-profit entity. You could be a non-profit legal entity and be a people and planet first enterprise. So you can have really any legal structure across the board and still meet the 5 standards.
As we were talking, I was looking at Lyft. So Lyft, we're people and planet first verified, and we're also a partner.
Yeah.
Do you want to maybe just briefly define what makes a partner versus just a verified enterprise?
Sure. And we are excited that you're a partner. So we have 3 kinds of partners. We have referral partners who just spread the word, right? And they have a custom referral link where they can send that out to enterprises or embed it on their website or whatever. And for spreading the word, when somebody clicks on their link and gets signed up, they get a 10% referral fee of the verification fee. We then have what we call review partners who help with the document checking and evidence review in all of the different countries around the world. And that also helps us with local context. It helps with language and being able to review documents in multiple languages. We've got enterprises verified in 132 countries now. So it's a lot of different languages to be able to read the documentation, but also to understand the context locally as well and know what the legal frameworks are locally and so on. The whole point of this system is that it's distributive and regenerative, right? And we're trying to help partners to be able to revenue generate themselves. So for any partner that does document reviewing, they actually get 60% of the verification fee. And then we have the third kind, which is the double badge partners that we talked about. So where their enterprises can come through. They still have to do step 1 and sign up and have a public profile because that's a really important piece of the verification, but for transparency, but they don't have to pay the fee and they don't have to have additional document review. They still have to renew every year, the same as everybody else, though.
And the scale of fee for a company is quite manageable, right? Like, what's the current fee?
The scale is $85, no matter what size you are.
No matter what,
Yes.
$85.
Yeah.
And what's the length of time that a company is certified for? Or, sorry, verified?
Verified. They have to renew once a year. So part of the assurance system is that, we are regularly checking this organization, right? They're having to show every year that they still meet all of 5 of the standards. So it's $85 to do the initial verification, and then it's $70 a year after that. And it was intentionally set at that rate because it's not trying to be extractive of these enterprises. They have enough overhead. They have enough pull, on their money to be able to do the impact work that they're doing and have these purpose-driven businesses, right? They don't need to be paying for something. It's 5 standards, right? It's not hard to assess 5 standards. And so the $85 covers the administration cost of running the verification. And
what would you say is the, for lack of a better word, the business case for companies? Like, why would they want to join? Like, what do they get out of it? Or what's the sort of draw or appeal?
What's really funny is that networks tend to ask that question more than enterprises, which I guess is because they're trying to think of things that, like, how will this appeal to the enterprises that I'm working with? But actually, a lot of the enterprises say, man, I'm so happy that I'm part of this kind of visible movement, right? And I see that I can have a badge that I can put on my products and my website and my building and various other places. And I'm part of this global community, but I'm also recognized really locally. So it's, for a lot of the enterprises, the motivation is to be part of something global and also recognized locally. And we specifically worked on a very public-facing badge that was appealing so that people would want to put it on things. And we're pretty shocked, in the first 6 months from when the badge went live, an organization had it made into this 6-foot sign that was stuck on the outside of their building, right? And then another organization In fact, it was probably bigger than 6 feet. It was a big sign on the side of their building. And then other organizations were putting it on their packaging and having all their packaging rebranded, right, to add the logo. And I see it on websites all the time. I see people holding up the signs and putting it on their front door and things like that. It's been really great watching that emergence.
Yeah, I do think, I will say, being a part of the B Corp world where it's all for-profit companies, it's also cool to see this movement where it's like the structure, it's like a little bit structure agnostic. It's more, if you're committed to social environmental impact and you've met these verification standards, then you can be verified. And so it's cool. What is the total number of verified enterprises, roughly?
Just under 1,000 that are verified right now. And then we've probably got about another 200-300 who are going through the process.
Got to train up more verifiers probably, right? It's like to handle the growth. What about, I feel like for smaller companies, I guess the nice thing is with only 5 standards that they have to meet, 5 components, it's not quite as burdensome as others. But how do you think about that for accessibility and rigor for smaller or emerging enterprises?
Yeah, exactly as you just said. It's 5 standards. It's yes or no, right? Do you meet the 5 standards or not? If you do, you're listed in the directory, you get the badge, you can use it, And if you don't meet those standards, it's how can we help you get there? So it's never really a no. It's never say never, right? It is occasionally a no. But for the most part, what we're saying to organizations is, here's how you can improve. And I think that's actually also what the point system does too. The points are intentionally not public. So you know that if somebody is in the directory, they have met the 5 standards at a minimum of 1 point for every standard. Otherwise, they can't be verified and they can't show up. But having it go up to 4 points means that the enterprises can see what else is possible. And we actually get messages from enterprises, network partners, et cetera, saying, actually reading the standards, seeing what was possible going up to 4 points gave me a glimpse of what the future could look like. And so I think for a lot of emerging enterprises, that's the thing that they find most interesting, is seeing what's possible. But we have, like, just as I said at the beginning, I'm based in the US. We have partners all over the world, and some countries have a lot more infrastructure or support systems in place for this stuff. I think there's a lot of amazing organizations that are purpose-driven in this country, and they didn't know there was a word for it, right? So what they like about it is being able to see what's possible. We just did, and I say we, so Purchasing with Purpose just did a piece of research across the country with all of our partners and enterprises, and trying to map how many of these organizations are there, do we think, in the US that we could be tapping into, and what do they look like, and how big are they, and what things are they focused on? And that research is going to be published next week, actually, and it'll be on our website, because the report is just a snapshot in time, but actually the research will be ongoing. There's going to be a button on our website. There's going to be live dashboards so you can see the answers coming in from everybody. But what we found was probably, I think it was 57% of the enterprises had revenue under 500,000 a year. And then maybe 16% were up to 1 million, 18% were under 5 million, and 8% were in the 5 to 50 million revenue a year bracket. So that's pretty much in line with mainstream business, right? I mean, small business, small and medium-sized business in the US is similar numbers, right, when you look at the spread. And that doesn't surprise me, because these are small and medium-sized businesses right across our country.
Are there any, I don't know off the top of your head, but what's like the largest, or what are like the very large, are there any very large companies that are verified?
Well, there are lots of very large companies that should be verified in the US, particularly. I can think of a few that you've interviewed probably. But yeah, so I would say in that sort of up to 50 million bracket, yes, there's some really interesting organizations. So these enterprises, they span every single thing you buy, right? Every good and service that you buy, you could buy from one of these organizations if we could see them, if we knew how to find them, if we could make them visible, right? And bring them forward. So Purchasing with Purpose, which is our US organization, we do something called supplier searching. So we help companies who want to buy from these types of enterprises put them into their supply chain. And we can search for enterprises in our database now across 90 different spend categories. So that's pretty much everything from like your IT services to grounds maintenance to who makes your coffee, who brands your swag, who, just about everything. So, and that's in the business to government, business to consumer, and business to business. So, right across everything.
Is what you're describing something that other folks could look to purchase from? Like, is that,
yes.
Or is that something that, okay.
So, verified enterprises are listed on a public directory and on the People and Planet First website. But we work with one of the partners for People and Planet First is a digital commons called the Good Market, or called Good Market. And you can go on goodmarket.global and see enterprises all over the world who have gone through the minimum standards, which is actually the second criteria of People and Planet First around operations, is to, at the minimum bar, you have to meet Good Market's minimum standards in your sector. So you can search those organizations on that website, or you can search them on Purchasing with Purpose website. You can search them on peopleplanetfirst.org. So yeah, we're bringing visibility, showing marketplaces, directories, etc., integrating these enterprises into places that people buy. So quite recently, SAP, who are one of the biggest global softwares for purchasing, you can now upload your People and Planet First certificate into a profile page and buyers can find you there. We've done an API integration with supplier.io so that you can be found there. And lots of partners and supporters are thinking about lots of different ways that we can make these organizations more visible, and so you can find them and buy from them.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, for B Corps in particular, I know that there's parts of the assessment that are, I'm not 100% sure how it's transferring to the new standards, but there's parts where, you would earn credit if you worked with like a florist that's like purpose driven, or like catering or photography. And so if there's a way that like more companies could have like a way to look across these different purchasing categories and identify X number of companies, what would be the best tool for them to do that?
Yeah, so they could do that on the People and Planet First directory, which is public. But yeah, I think just you saying that is making me want to comment on the fact that, to me, B Corps should be buying from People and Planet First verified enterprises. We should really have a sort of more formal partnership that says, hey, you're going to get an increased score if you're buying from these enterprises, because they are absolutely meeting that mission and vision and values system that B Corps have, right? So they are really the ideal buyer for this type of enterprise. And many B Corps are also People and Planet First verified. It's not to say that they're separate from each other, but actually one of the things we work on is, how do we get enterprises buying from enterprises? How do we get enterprises buying together? Like, can we bring them together to do collaborative purchasing agreements so that they can reduce their overheads? This is what visibility of this movement can bring, is opportunities for it to grow and become this more dominant business model.
What are you most excited about as it relates to things you're seeing in the People and Planet First verification? Are there partnerships that have developed, or are there particular aspects that you're just getting really excited about?
I'm excited about all of it, really. I'm very passionate about this topic. I can usually talk about it for hours and hours without getting bored, because I love the fact that it is participatory, it is distributive, it is respectful, it is trying to do something when we're all keenly aware of the fact that the world is on fire, right? There are problems that we are seeing that are too big for any one organization to tackle alone. And we need collaboration. We need the next economy, business models to be in the forefront. We need, all of this stuff to happen. And what I'm seeing is new partners wanting to come forward and sign up and say, yeah, I'll be a referral partner, I'll be a review partner, new enterprises referring other enterprises, government organizations getting involved and saying, yeah, how can we support this emerging, business model using the verification? There's so many different partners. And part of the joy of it being participatory is that in their local context, partners can run with this, right? Because it has 5 standards, it's got a framework, it's got governing principles. It's there for people to use. And we do a call amongst all of the different partners around the world. So there's nearly 70 partner networks now around the world. And once a month, we have 3 calls that cover 3 different time zones to try and capture as many of those 70 as we can. So I go on all 3 of the calls because I like to support all of the partners. One is at 8 p.m. Eastern my time, one is at 7 a.m. the next day, and the other one is at 1 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern. And that pretty much gets most geographies across those 3. And what I love about those meetings is listening to what all of the different partners are doing with it and how they are running with it and how they are seeing it as a tool for visibility or a key to unlock a door towards a new opportunity that's going to benefit the enterprises. And that's ultimately why we're all taking part in this as participants.
So in the early days of B Corp, it was very much this like, we're a community, we're buying from each other, we're growing, it's amazing. And once you start to get big enough, large players start to say, hey, that sounds valuable, I want to do that. So people in Planet First verification, let's look into that. How do you sort of protect against, as you're growing and scaling, large companies who, and I know that if they meet the 5 standards, they could verify, it's similar with B Corp. There's some companies that could meet the standards that they don't want necessarily to be in the community, et cetera. So how are you thinking about the more success we have, the more you grow the tent, there's the more larger, more traditional players want to be involved? And then how does that not dilute this sort of earlier stage work? How are you thinking about that?
I feel like that's the beauty of it because it's simple. So 5 standards, how many profit extractive companies could meet the standards? 0, right? So they wouldn't be able to meet the standard in the first place. Bearing in mind, you have to meet all 5. So you can't just meet 1 or 2 of them. You have to meet all 5 all the time. But also, because of partnership that we have with Good Market, for example, there's community moderation. So all of the claims that these organizations are making about themselves are transparent. They're listed on their profile page. Anybody can read what you're saying about your organization. And you can also flag an organization if you think it's making false claims. So you can anonymously flag. You can say, this organization does not do the things that it says. Here's evidence of how I know this is untrue. They would be investigated, and if the claims were upheld, they would be removed immediately from the directory and they're no longer there. They're not showing up in an API. They're not, so they're not able to be in those softwares or directories and so on. And I think having the community moderation piece, A, provides a level of assurance. B, means that it's really important that companies are transparent about their claims and that they can stand by them. So I think that trust is important and many companies gravitate towards it. And to be honest, those that know that they can't meet it, they don't apply, right? So, or we maybe see them start to apply, and the minute that they're asked for evidence to back up all 5 of their claims, if they can't produce the evidence, they just stop responding. They know that they can't meet it. So I think that does give a level of assurance. And we want there to be millions of these organizations getting verified around the world. I don't think it can be co-opted because of the way it's been set up. And that's one of the design principles of it.
I like your answer. And I'm also just aware of how creative, motivated large companies can be to like figure out a way to get in. But I do agree that
But if you think about like they have to, for example, they have to be able to prove use of surplus and revenue generation, right? So they have to actually submit, here's our tax return, here's our profit and loss, here's our balance sheet, right? We can look at that and say, are you siphoning off all of this money, right, before you get to having surplus? That would be a red flag immediately in somebody's financial documents, right? So I think it's not impossible. It's never going to be impossible to get around any system, right? But I feel good about the simplicity of it and the fact that others can flag companies, which they want to do if they are part of a system that they believe in. They want to flag others that are not upholding those same values.
What about an example of like a business that went through verification and maybe how it changed them or how it tweaked their patterns or behaviors? Do you have any real world examples?
Yeah, loads. But one that I was listening to, and actually I said to you before we started recording, I was listening to Beyond the Bee, the episode that just came out about steward ownership, and people talking about their example of something bad happening. And the same thing happened to me in an organization that I was in the UK years and years ago. Bad actors, like came in and we lost control of something that we really cared about. And that was devastating to me. And the fifth standard around structure. So in the US, I quite often talk to enterprises who want to get verified and they say, well, but I'm a really good person. Like I would never sell my company to a private equity investor who wanted to strip out my mission, right? I would just never do that. And I usually, or people within our team usually try and get on a call with that person and talk to them. And I was talking to a guy recently who said this exact same thing to me. I'll never do this, And I said, what about when you retire? Or what about if somebody came along and they said, we can scale what you're doing all over the place. Like you care passionately about your mission. We can help you scale. And he's like, oh, but I would never sell out to somebody who I didn't believe in. And then he took a pause and he goes, actually, I'm saying that, but a really good friend of mine ran a similar organization to mine. And he did like a merger with another much, much bigger organization who promised him that they wouldn't get rid of his mission. And as soon as it was embedded, as soon as it all went through, they immediately stripped out mission in favor of bigger profit. And he was like, oh my goodness, and he was having this like light bulb moment of exactly the thing that we're trying to protect against. He was having that light bulb moment on the call and just saying, yeah, okay, what can I do, right? How can I protect this? How do we help educate people? How are we going to show them other structures? And, that's where people like Lift Economy and the MBA, Erench and Donut Economics and Purpose Group and, all of these different organizations are showing us this deep design of business is so, so important. Embedding this stuff is so important because I don't believe people are fundamentally bad people. Of course, they don't found a company thinking, I want to do bad things, right? But life comes along and you might want to grow, you might want to retire, you might want, different things might come along that might change if you're not protecting it through your business structure and through these different protection clauses that we can actually put in place with any business structure. Many of us don't know how, right? So that education piece. And to me, those kinds of conversations are the best conversations of seeing a business go through verification and how it's changing them.
Yeah. And I think speaking on that legal piece, there's some good distinctions in the process around benefit corporations and that being important, but not necessarily sufficient for durable protection of the mission. Yeah. Could you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, I think it's fine to say that you want to consider things. It's very different to say that you're prioritizing them and that you are embedding that into the governance of your organization. And that really is the key difference that we're looking at here with companies to say, I believe you as a founder care about this, but there's nothing in there that's going to protect you. And, you can do all sorts of different things with your legal model to protect your purpose, like having golden shares, like having, different organizations who are part of your governance structure, or, just writing things into your governing documents. One of the beautiful things we're seeing from all the partners around the world is they're sharing governance models that they're seeing emerge in different countries. And we have like a shared resource folder where you can put things that might be of benefit to other partners around the world. And one of the things that we're going to start doing as partners is sharing redacted copies of governance documents that we're seeing emerge, because I think there is so much to learn around what's possible. And you can be really creative with what's possible with your governance model. It's generally speaking, it's just that we all think we have to live within the confines of what's available to us right now. But actually, we can all be creative when it comes to legal structures and governance models.
What do you think is the longer term vision? We have X amount of, verified enterprises by X amount of years. What does success look like for the collective going forward?
I think that's almost impossible for me to say, because it's different things to different people. That's sort of what I was saying earlier about it being this participatory system, is that it's going to be used in different ways to unlock all sorts of amazing opportunities in different contexts around the world. And so for me, success looks like more partners, more enterprises, more opportunities, more visibility, more collaboration, etc. But I couldn't and wouldn't speak to this is what the end goal is, because I don't think it is an end goal. The whole point of a participatory system is that it's emerging over time. It's learning, it's being adaptable to a changing world. I mean, just look at what's happening right now in our current system politically, right? It's changing fast. People are, your head spins when you think about all of the things that are changing really quickly. And so we need to adapt to a quickly changing system whilst having this clear boundary. And I think what I love about it is the more partners and enterprises that get involved, the more participants are sharing their feedback and helping this emergence to happen and helping it to grow and become robust, and something that I think all of us are really, really proud of, that we're part of it.
Well, what do you need right now, and how can listeners support your work?
So People and Planet First needs, I'm repeating myself, it needs more partners. It needs more enterprises to get verified. It needs more supporters who want to see this happen. So it needs more consumers saying, I want to see that badge on something, or businesses or government agencies saying, how can I help? How can I support with this? Who can I buy from that has this badge? That's what it needs. It needs more participants who care and feel passionately about it and want to see it thrive.
I love it. And then where can folks go to learn more about your work, and then People and Planet First verification?
Yeah, so both, probably website is the easiest. We try and have just about everything you might want to know about People and Planet First on the peopleandplanetfirst.org website. So if you go over to the right-hand side of the website, there's a quick links button. If you want an overview to answer a question on just about anything to do with verification, being a partner, getting verified, directories, where did it start, who are the partners, who are the stewards, etc., it's all going to be on that quick links page. How do I sign up, etc. And then in the US for Purchasing with Purpose, if there are other networks who want to join us and work on this stuff across the US, then purchasingwithpurpose.org or Rebecca at purchasingwithpurpose.org. Either one works. So joining us is great.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. I'm really excited about People and Planet First verification. I think it adds a lot of value. I think people would, there is something to be said for a shared badge and a shared community. People just like to be part of it. And so I do think it's catching on. And I hope to see it grow and continue to flourish. And thanks for sharing about it here.
Thank you for being a participant.
Hey, Beyond the Bee listeners. If you're looking for even more inspiring conversations with leaders on the front lines of our movement towards just futures, Be sure to subscribe to Next Economy Now, produced by the team at Lyft Economy. Next Economy Now broadens the focus beyond the B Corp movement to highlight the leaders who are taking a regenerative, bioregional, democratic, equitable, racially just, and whole systems approach to creating the new economy. Check out our latest episodes at lifteconomy.com/podcast. You can subscribe to Next Economy Now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.